Hello, everyone. It's Jenna Ryan with Self Love You. Welcome to today's podcast. The topic of today is cognitive distortions. We're going to talk about cognitive distortions and how these negative thought processes can destroy your life and cause you to feel negatively about yourself, about others, and the world. Welcome to my channel. This is my channel that I've been doing for 10 years where I talk about self-love topics, learning how to love yourself, free yourself from codependency, set boundaries, get out of abusive relationships, and live your best life. If you're new here, that's who we are. If you've been here around for a while, then welcome back. It's good to see you. I love seeing you guys that I've seen for years and years in the comment section. You guys are starting to warm up to the fact that I'm back and I am going full speed ahead with the channel and really growing the audience and building a community where we can all just put the world aside and focus on our healing, growth, and development. So if you're working on yourself, this is the place to be. You may want to put aside time every week, every day to journal and listen to some of the podcasts that I provide to help you along the path to healing and recovery and deliverance from anything that holds you back in life. The topic of today is cognitive distortions. I Googled it and I don't like the explanations that are given for cognitive distortions on Google. I think that based upon my research and understanding, cognitive distortions are negative thoughts and generalizations that you have about the world that cause, in my opinion, it narrows your view and perspective of the world. And it can cause you to think things that are wrong. They're like logical fallacies. They're false. They're not true. They're kind of like negative core beliefs. But when I'm talking about cognitive distortions, I'm talking about generalized cognitive distortions that all of us can have just as a product of being human. They're human types of thinking patterns that can lead to outcomes, can lead to decisions, can lead to realizations that are not true. Negative thinking, stinking thinking. And if we look into these different cognitive distortions and we watch and we listen to our mind, listen to our thoughts, watch our thoughts, then we can begin to weed out these cognitive distortions and begin to help our minds be a more safe place and a better place for our advancement, for our progression, for us moving on to the next level. If we can weed out the cognitive distortions that cause negative thinking. I don't believe that cognitive distortions are necessarily just negative thinking. I believe that they are a coping mechanism that our brain uses as kind of like an evolutionary process to keep us safe from harm. It's just the way our brains work. Our brains are always scanning the room, always scanning the environment, looking for problems. We're always looking for problems. And that is what has helped us to survive. And just think about, back in the caveman days, whenever, humans were seriously in jeopardy from dangerous animals or, whatever was out there. And so the coping strategy in order to survive mentally has been to seek out the problem so that you can what? Solve the problem. However, we don't need all of that urgency or all of that hypervigilancy today because we live in a very high-tech world. We live in we don't have to fight for our food and necessarily and go and, hunt animals. and we don't have to worry about our well-being and safety for the most part. So these mental processes, these ways of thinking, may not serve us very well. And so it's time to really get into what they are so that we can know when they happen, and we can begin to take action to turn it around. So I'm here on psychcentral.com. You know, any psychology website is going to have a list of cognitive distortions. This is like Psych 101. So that's not the point, but I am going to go through these common cognitive distortions and distorted thoughts from psychcentral.com. Number one is filtering. Okay, so the next one is polarized thinking. So this is 15 cognitive distortions, and number 2 is polarized or all or none thinking. Polarized thinking is whenever you think about things in an all or nothing way, black or white. There's no gray. So let's say your girlfriend does something wrong and upsets you, and you decide to break up with her and you hate her forever. Or let's say you're just looking at everything like very rigid. If somebody is not exactly as you expect them to be, then you don't like them at all. You want them out of your life. Okay, all or nothing thinking is a very immature way to think, because that's how we think when we're babies. That's how we think when we're 2-3 years old and we throw a tantrum because we can't get that cookie, and so we hate everybody and we don't ever want to play again. That is part of the childhood development process, to go through a stage of all or none, all or nothing, black or white thinking, where you can't see any gray. It's just very childlike and very quick and very to the quick. And it doesn't have space. It doesn't have emotional regulation. It's just literally flying off the handle, very reactive, very impulsive. And sometimes whenever you think in terms of all or nothing, you end up doing things that you later regret, saying things you regret that you didn't mean because you were angry. So it's very important that we get a hold of our all or nothing thinking by noticing it, A, and B, by reasoning with ourselves during the thought. So if you're having an all or none thought process, being able to catch yourself and remind yourself using reparenting techniques that there are shades of gray, and maybe you can cool off and give it some time, and perhaps you'll think differently about the situation in a little while. So that is polarization. That's number 2. Okay, then we've got number 3, overgeneralization. So if you're able to listen to your thoughts and watch yourself and hear yourself and listen to yourself, and even in conversations with others, if you're able to catch yourself and others as you do these things, you can help yourself progress and become more healthy, more mature, and you'll just be a better person. You'll be able to level up. If you can catch yourself doing this, it will help you, because these are negative. They're distortions of reality. They are not reality. They are distortions, negative thinking. So when you overgeneralize something, you take an isolated negative event and turn it into a never-ending pattern of loss and defeat. I'm on psychcentral.com. Overgeneralization. You use words like always, never, everything, nothing. That is thoughts that you have are constantly, I'll never be able to do that. I'll never be able to do that. I'll never do this again. I shouldn't have done that. Should be in here too, huh? Nothing ever works. Everything sucks. Whatever it is. Overgeneralizations. You have to stop yourself and ask yourself, Is it true? Who is that lady that wrote that book? Is it true? Katie? Is it true? I will let you know right now. Is it true? I don't know. Her name's Katie. Byron Katie. I knew her name was Katie. Byron Katie. And she has a book called I Need Your Love. Is it true? And I believe that that is a workbook, a philosophy for overcoming these types of cognitive distortions. Anything you can do to help you to rise above these thought processes, which can be, listening to music or meditation or pondering on bigger thoughts or listening to your thoughts in a meditative way, can help you to grow beyond these low-level, negative, false fallacies so that you can live your best life. So overgeneralizations can also manifest in your thoughts about the world and its events. So you can think that the world is a certain way because of your overgeneralizations. And you forget that there's so many options, There are so many options, but so often we narrow our world. We narrow our world with overgeneralizations. And it's a way that we protect ourselves because we keep ourselves from having to take risks and get out and do things about whatever it is that we're talking about. But the risks the safety of staying in our comfort zone comes at a great price because our world is so narrowed with this very generalized thinking, negative thinking. Okay, I think we're on, let's see, number 1. So we've got filtering. Discounting the positive, number 4. Discounting the positive is similar to filtering, where but the difference is you dismiss things that are positive. So if it's positive, you don't think about it at all. You literally just let it fly in one ear, out the other. So if you're if you have some great talent, you don't even take credit for the talent. That doesn't even get to be on your score sheet because you're great at it, because it's positive. If you're a wonderful homemaker, that doesn't count. That doesn't count. Your skills don't count. The only thing that counts is negative. That's very similar to filtering. So discounting the positive, the main difference between this and filtering is that you dismiss it as something of no value when you think of positive. So if someone compliments the way you look, you think they're just being nice. Or if your boss tells you how wonderful your report is, you think that anyone else could do it. You do not give yourself credit where credit is due. Number 5 is jumping to conclusions. When you jump to conclusions, you interpret an event or situation negatively without evidence supporting such conclusion. Then you react to your assumption. So jumping to conclusions, you think of your situation as negative. You don't have any evidence. You're just assuming that the worst possible thing is happening. And then taking it a step further, not only do you jump to conclusions, but then you take action. You react upon this conclusion that you've drawn. And it may or may not even be true. Have you ever had that happen where you overreacted, and later on found out that you were wrong? That is because of jumping to conclusions. It's very important that you allow life to unfold without trying to figure it out before it even happens. You have to allow things to happen. Because if you jump to conclusions, It can cause you to take the wrong actions. It can cause you a lot of problems. And so it's very important to seek out evidence to support your conclusion and really make sure before you react. So this example here says your partner comes home looking serious. Instead of asking how they are, you immediately assume that they are mad at you. Consequently, you keep your distance. In reality, your partner had a bad day at work. So thinking one thing is correct and then acting upon it can be very damaging to yourself. Allowing life to unfold is more enriching and leads to greater success and satisfaction. Jumping to conclusions or mind reading is often in response to a persistent thought or concern of yours. So if you feel like you're not good enough to be with this certain man or this certain woman, then you might have a tendency to jump to conclusions of your own more often. So you're just looking for proof. It's your mind's process of looking for proof that it's right. I knew I was right. I knew it. I knew you were having an affair. When you jump to conclusions without evidence and proof. Okay, let's see what's next. Number 6 is catastrophizing. Catastrophizing is when you jump to conclusions, but you jump to the worst possible conclusion known to man. In every situation, like everything is just the worst thing you've ever heard. Everything is the best thing known to man. Everything is, even if it's improbable, like just panic. This is a sense of panic, catastrophizing. This is very childlike. It's very immature thinking. It's not emotional intelligence. It is very narrow. And it's like other people have to walk on eggshells because they may set you off and you may have a drama fit. And everything is a catastrophe. And everything is such a big deal. And you're so wound up, so tight. And what they say here on Psych Central is this cognitive distortion often comes with what-if questions. What if he didn't call because he got in an accident? What if she hasn't arrived because she really didn't want to spend time with me? What if I help this person and they end up betraying me or abandoning me? Catastrophizing. And, people who have dealt with abuse in the past or have dealt with codependency or dealt with issues where you've been traumatized, you've actually had catastrophes occur. And so it makes it all the more difficult not to catastrophize. So this is a thought process that's very prevalent in trauma abuse survivors. And we have to be careful that we don't allow the past to override the future or the present. We have to keep the past in the past and remind ourselves that it's now 2022, about to be 2023, and there's not a major problem right now. I can drive to the store and get out of the situation if I need to. Whereas before, when you were traumatized, you may not have been able to get out. And so you have like that PTSD of just going right there emotionally on every little thing or on little things that are not as big of a deal today as they were when they occurred originally. So that's catastrophizing. We have to really help ourselves not catastrophize and help ourselves to see things more realistically and not through the lenses of these cognitive distortions. Number 7, personalization. Personalization leads you to believe that you're responsible for events that in reality are completely or partially out of your control. This cognitive distortion often results in you feeling guilty or assigning blame without contemplating the factors involved. And they give an example here in the article. Your child has had an accident and you blame yourself for allowing them to go to the party. Or you feel that your partner had woken earlier, you would have been ready on time for work. So you're personalizing. Some trauma survivors are so trapped in this cognitive distortion that they can actually, I've read, believe that like major things, they caused it. Like a tornado happened and that was because, I don't know, they did something. It can get pretty outrageous because the mind just kind of gets stuck in that phase of life where you believe everything. It's kind of a narcissistic phase where it's very myopic, where you believe that the whole world revolves around you, and personalization is taking personal responsibility for things that are out of your control, or even either to the positive or to the negative. You know, you can't control things that are happening. And part of freeing yourself up from these cognitive distortions involves being able to breathe and meditate and take a step back and have space and not being so hyper vigilant and looking around constantly for errors and problems and things that are going to hurt you. If you take a step back and relax and realize that there's some things you cannot control, and all you can do is control what is in your area, but you can't control everything. Trying to control things that are out of your control is madness, complete madness. Another aspect of personalization is taking things personally, where you internalize everything like it's your fault. Okay, personalization. That's a negative cognitive distortion that has to be healed. Control fallacies. Control fallacies. This is Psych Central. The word fallacy refers to an illusion, a misconception, or an error. Control fallacies can go two opposite ways. You either feel responsible or in control of everything in your and other people's lives, or you feel you have no control at all over anything. Example, you couldn't complete a report that was due today. You think, of course I couldn't complete it. My boss is overworking me, and everyone was so loud at the office. Who could get work done like that? Okay, in this example, you place all control of your behavior on someone else or an external circumstance. This is an external control fallacy. So blaming someone else. So let's say you lash out at someone, you attack someone verbally, you do something negative to them, and then you blame that person for your actions. Nope, it's not their fault. It's your fault. If you are the one who's doing the action, you're the only one who can control yourself. No one can cause you to feel a certain way or act a certain way unless you're in a hostage situation or something. So you have control. External things do not have control over your behavior and your actions. At the same time, you don't control everything. So you really have to kind of level out, what do I run here and what do I not? Your actions do not control the lives of others, and others' actions do not control your life, period. Okay, let's go to the next one. 9, fallacy of fairness. This cognitive distortion refers to measuring every behavior and situation on a scale of fairness, finding that other people don't assign the same value of fairness to the event makes you resentful. Okay? In other words, you believe You know what's fair and what isn't, and it upsets you when other people disagree with you. The fallacy of fairness will lead you to face conflict with certain people and situations because you feel the need for everything to be fair according to your own parameters. But fairness is rarely absolute and can be self-serving. You know what? I'm going to disagree with this one. Maybe I have a fallacy of fairness, but I just don't agree. I think that there is an absolute truth, and I believe that there's an absolute sense of fairness because I believe in God. So I'm going to skip over that one. Okay? You can have that fallacy in my book. Okay, blaming, number 10. Blaming. Blaming refers to making others responsible for how you feel. You make me feel bad. This distortion comes from believing that others have the power to affect your life even more than you do yourself. So blaming others for how you feel, blaming others for your actions, or just blaming others in general. Really, your time should be spent focusing on how you can make your life better. And if someone else is so horrible that you have to blame them, then working through those issues and those conflicts. Blaming people doesn't do you any good. And they have an example here that says, your partner comments on your new dress and you feel upset for the rest of the day. You make me feel bad about myself, you say. Okay, they cannot do that. If you feel bad about yourself because your partner commented on your new dress, then that shows me that you need to set a boundary and you need to say, don't say that about me. Or maybe you need to figure out what it is about yourself that you don't feel good enough and you don't love your dress and you can't just own it. So there's other things that need to be dealt with. And instead of dealing with those things, we use these cognitive distortions to cope with it. Okay? 11, shoulds. As cognitive distortions, should statements are subjective, ironclad rules you set for yourself and others without considering the specifics of a circumstance. So there's a lot of variety in the world, and there's no black and white rigidity, and there is some room for gray, and you shouldn't should on yourself. Okay? Some people think you should always make your bed. You should always make people laugh. You should always hold your feelings in. You should always ask for someone to do what you can do for yourself. You should be better. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that. You get that, right? Y'all understand that shoulds are not good. Number 12, emotional reasoning. Emotional reasoning, I'm sure I do this a lot, this cognitive distortion. Emotional reasoning leads you to believe that the way you feel is a reflection of reality. Wow. I feel this way about this situation, hence, it must be fact. And that is where we get the quote, don't believe everything you think. Okay? Just because you feel bad doesn't mean whatever you're thinking about is bad. You could be just going through a moment of feeling bad, and if you'll just give yourself a minute or an hour or two or maybe the next day, you'll have a different thought about whatever it is. So if you feel inadequate in a situation, it doesn't mean that you don't belong. It just means for that moment you feel inadequate, and you can't decide that you are inadequate because you feel inadequate. Those two don't go together. That's stinking thinking. And it says here, this cognitive distortion might also lead you to believe future events depend upon how you feel. Just because you feel a certain way doesn't make it so. Okay, so give yourself some room and ask yourself, okay, I feel this way. Really understand how you feel and understand how things could be different even as you're feeling that way. And you begin to kind of challenge your brain, challenge your mind, challenge your thoughts and say, okay, what if things were this way? Instead of just rigidly going forward like a bull in a china cabinet with negative thinking all day long. Stop, ask yourself, and give yourself space and time and give room for not just your emotions, but also for your reasoning. Do it all so that you can get a better grasp on reality and not be neurotic. The next one, fallacy of change. The fallacy of change has you expecting other people will change their ways to suit your expectations or needs, particularly when you pressure them enough. So we all know that you can't change other people, that you can't change what is out of your control. And so it becomes vital that we recognize this, accept it. Acceptance is a big part of that. Accepting what is out of our control and letting go of what's not ours to deal with, and just accepting that we can't change other people and we're not going to get our way every time with others. Number 14, global labeling. Labeling or mislabeling refers to taking a single attribute and turning it into an absolute. This happens when you judge and then define yourself or others based on an isolated event. The labels assigned are usually negative and extreme. Example, you see your new teammate applying makeup before a meeting and you call them shallow, or they don't submit a report on time and you call them useless. This is an extreme form of overgeneralization that leads you to judge an action without taking the context into action. This, in turn, leads you to see yourself and others in ways that might not be accurate. Labels. Labels are so dangerous and they're so prevalent right now in society. Ooh. That's such a negative way to think, is by labeling people. Assigning labels to others can impact how you interact with them. This in turn could add friction to your relationships. When you assign those labels to yourself, it can hurt your self-esteem and confidence, leading you to feel insecure and anxious. So labeling, just stop labeling. Stop labeling people. It's negative thinking. It's a cognitive distortion, and it's damaging, and it narrows your world. Number 15, always being right. This desire turns into a cognitive distortion when it trumps everything else, including evidence and other people's feelings. So if you always have to be right, that's a problem. In this cognitive distortion, you see your own opinions as facts. Have you ever met anyone like that? I probably have been like that. If I'm looking outward, that probably means it's probably me somewhere in there. You always don't be afraid for it to be you. Don't be afraid to be found out. Don't be afraid to let these little negative thoughts out of their cage. Don't deny them. Don't use, what do they call it? Where you're trying to protect yourself through denial. Denial is a psychological defense mechanism that Freud made up. It's called abnegation when you're in denial. Don't deny, because denial keeps you from seeing the truth. Don't put up those defenses and don't be afraid to look at yourself and see the real you, especially when we're dealing with negative thinking, because negative thinking just leads you down deeper into negative thoughts. Whereas if you can suss them out and find them, then you can begin to turn them over and see things in a more realistic way. Always being right. You go to great lengths to prove that you're right. You don't have to be right all the time. It doesn't really matter. The world will still keep on turning even if you're wrong. And you can be wrong. It's okay to be wrong. It doesn't make you any less of a person to be wrong. It just makes you human. We're all wrong sometimes. We all do things wrong. We all make mistakes. We all have our own path to follow. Some of us are sometimes right and sometimes wrong, and sometimes we're right a lot, and sometimes we're wrong every once in a while. It just depends. So those, my friends, are the 15 cognitive distortions. What do you think about these? How do you think that discussing this will help you in your self-love journey, help you to recover, help you to get stronger and be stronger for yourself? Let me know in the comments below. Please subscribe, like, share, come back, because I'm going full speed ahead with this self-love you thing. So I hope you guys like it. Until next time, I'm Jenna Ryan, and I will talk to you soon.